Well, good afternoon again. Hope you don't mind. We got the camera rolling here to record it so that others can enjoy it as well. And this is the first event of this edition, the 2026 spring semester edition of Westwood Lecture. Started at least from my immediate past predecessor, past president, emeritus, Mitch Daniels, and hosting a broad range of interesting topics. But I guess among the topics that interest us a lot these days, and you can read the news, I guess no one read newspapers these days, I still do, can watch whatever social media that you prefer, and you can watch the movie. They're all talking about all these AI agents that talk to you. And I heard sometimes they drive you to do not so good things. Sometimes they soothe you, and you roll along with them, and start to wonder now, who is the human here? And used to be just science fiction. So, yeah, right. But now it's actually happening everywhere. And so here in the CS department, we've got an outstanding group of colleagues working on a variety of different AI topics, including today's speaker, Professor Jeong, Sooyeon Jeong, who's going to tell us more about social robots for human flourishing. So I guess there's some good news at the end.
Hopefully.
Well,
yeah, that's.
I don't worry too much about AI agents taking over.
Yeah, for good things. Yeah.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, President Jeong, for inviting me. And this is really, I'm very honored and excited to share about my research. And hopefully, by the end of this talk, you have some hopeful thoughts about social robots, integrating into our lives. So before I maybe dive into the research portion, if you don't mind, I would like to maybe start with a personal story. So in 2001, I was about 12 years old. I watched this movie called AI by Steven Spielberg. I grew up in Korea, and has anyone watched this movie before? Yeah, I saw them. I see. That's awesome. So to have, because when I ask students, they're like, "What is that movie?" They don't know. But in this movie, for those who are not familiar with this movie, this is sort of inspired by a Pinocchio story where a robotic child. So in this movie, this boy is actually a robot child who wants to become a real boy, and he's programmed to love his sort of human parents, and the movie kind of follows through. His adventure to find this blue fairy that'll help him become a real boy. But the part actually, for me, the part that struck me the most was actually this teddy bear robot next to David, the protagonist, which kind of acted more like a Jiminy Cricket in a way. Was this Teddy was kind of staying by David's side throughout his journey and all the ups and downs and adventures, and then kind of comforted David whenever he felt sad or experienced some kind of challenges, and then offered encouragement to kind of pursue his goals and dreams. And I thought, I remember, as a young child, leaving the movie theater, it's how I would love to have something like that, some kind of the social confidant or a advocate or a friend that could help me kind of go through my own life. And 25 years later, we live in a world where interactive devices are everywhere around us. We do have, a lot of us have phones, mobile phones, and a lot of us also have wearable devices that track our physical health. We also have LLMs, large language models, and all these AI tools that actually can even let us do a lot more different things. But with, and especially with the large language models, a lot of the times, we see a lot of news and articles that people are building, building this romantic relationship with AI agents and things like that. So you might ask, Sooyeon, why do you need a robot? We have this, already figured out. We have all these amazing interactive technologies and AI tools. And before answering that, I want to maybe start with a quick video.
adorable. Oh, thank you. It's very nice to meet you. Do you want to play a game? Yay! Let's play a game. It's called with
We are getting all of this physiologic data. So going forward, once that's fully integrated into the actual robot and he can respond to it, the bear may try to engage a kid with jokes. And if those physiologic parameters aren't coming down, you'll be able to switch. Maybe this is a kid who really needs some relaxation. Maybe we'll do some guided imaging together.
Well, how are you doing? You're looking a little bit sleepy. Should we put it back in his house? Night, night, Michael. Yeah, go ahead.
And good night, Hello. Wow, your house looks comforting. Thank you. Why did it have to end so soon?
Right. Maybe like if you don't mind, what are some of the things you notice in this video? Like there's no right or wrong answers.
The little girl was very excited to do she was very eager to engage with the teddy bear.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement. And there are a lot of sort of like touch, kind of like haptic behavior, like cuddling and like, scratching the robot's like belly, I guess. And also a lot of it, like, you could like sort of see it became like a triadic interactions, multi-party interaction, not just one-on-one. And there has been a lot of research done sort of investigating like the benefits of physical embodiment and presence. In particular, physical presence of being in the same space with 3D space with you has been shown to increase social influence and effectiveness. So like if in terms of long-term engagement or long-term like behavior change, a physically embodied robot in the same space with you has been shown to be more effective and convincing people to stay on a weight management program. And a lot of studies have found that when robots are physically embodied and present with you, people tend to have more favorable attitudes and the behavioral responses to these robots compared to more telepresent or like virtual agents. And then, as you saw in the video too, the robots actually allow sort of unique, like multimodal, collaborative interactions, which includes touch and proximity, how close you are with one another, and also gestures, different kinds of spatial interactions. So you also mentioned might have seen, when the robot was pointing at some other place, the child actually followed the gaze, so they were referring to the same. Same point, same space in the space. So like engaging in joint attentions and spontaneous like multi-party interactions. And then, kind of maybe like recap us, kind of maybe reiterate. So like the goal of my research, my research program is to design and social robots and socially interactive agents, AI agents for, to improve human lives. And the way we think about it is like, we want to design these AI agents or robots to deeply engage with us in a social and emotional ways to support us to accomplish our personal goals, whether it be like, living healthier, learning better, or etc. And then we want to think about how can these interactive agents live with us in a real world setting, not just in a lab, not just in a computer, but like, to integrate it into our lives and then, help us kind of thrive. And instead of doing things for us, all the time, but like maybe kind of similar to like the way Jiminy Cricket does, like, instead of telling us what to do, but like, support us to like be on the right path. So how do we do that? So in our research, it takes the iterative human-centered design and development processes. So first, usually what we do is like we try to identify social and technical gaps that exist in our real-world systems, and then we try to engage with our stakeholders and use human-centered approaches to really understand what are the really like pain points that they have, and what are the things that would actually help us. And actually, the project project I just showed the video I just showed, that was the first time I had to like work with clinical staff in the Boston Children's Hospital. And as a very young graduate student, like I had all these ideas, like, oh, I'm gonna make this kind of robot, do these things, and then I brought it to the hospital, and then clinical staff was like, that's not gonna work. They're like, you have no idea what kind of things that these very sick children go through. Like they're easily scared, or there are things that would like tick them off. So you have to. It really helped me to. Have a lot of meetings with them, do iterative design sessions with them, and try to understand what are the things that will actually help these stakeholders. And then eventually, because the goal is to for that clinical staff to adopt these tools in the future. And I, as a researcher or engineers, I might be removed from the field. And then once we design these tools and robots or technologies, we want to evaluate them in the real world settings, so not just in the lab, but in the real world setting where through long-term interactions, because a lot of times, robots are still pretty new. We don't see that many robots in real life, maybe other than Roombas. I guess there are some robots in manufacturing settings, but especially for social robots, there are very few. So we want to engage in long-term interactions and to see, how do these robots actually adapt to people's lives, and how do people change their routines or daily lives, or how do their engagements change over time. So in the next, 40 minutes or so, I would like to kind of go through a series of different projects I have engaged in, both when I was in grad school, but also at Purdue with my own students. So the first one I want to talk about is the mental health. As everyone probably know, mental health problem is on the rise. So nearly 1 in 5 American adults have a diagnosable mental health condition in any given year. And then globally, mental health conditions are a leading cause of disability. And because of that, a lot of people have looked into, what are some, technologies that can be used to address this issue. So, we see a lot of when you go to a Play Store or some kind of mobile app store, you might see a lot of different digital mobile mental health technologies like Woobot or different kind of meditation apps. But a lot of the times I don't know if some of you have experienced that you download it, try it for a little bit, and then you never touch it again. So the sustainability and long-term engagement is always hard. And this is where I think a robotic companion or social robots can play an interesting role, especially when you're co-present in the home space. So specifically, I'd be happy to talk more, answer any questions at the end. But basically, kind of going into the way hypothesis I have, a lot of these existing mental health technologies are kind of designed to sort of emulate what the therapists do or what the psychologists do. So had this a hat of oh, I'm the expert and I'm gonna tell you what to do. But so before this, my prior study looked into that, and then with college students at MIT, and we actually found that the robot that kind of acts like a mental health coach in a long-term setting was helpful. But there were some interesting sort of associations between students' personality traits, specifically when students with high neuroticism, we found that they actually improved a little less from the robot interventions. So that got me really thinking. It's well, typically neurotic people with high neuroticism, they experience more. They're more vulnerable to mental health disease, but they're not gaining as much benefit from this. So what do we need to do to what do we need to do to mitigate that effect? Are there different ways, different roles the robots should play in terms of helping our mental health in our daily lives? So in this study, I looked into I compared 3 different robot roles. So the control robot was, it was like a assistant-like robot without the mental health intervention. So it would just kind of do Alexa-like type of interaction. So you can ask it questions, you can ask it to stream music and things like that. So kind of basic robot skills only. And the coach-like robot was it had sort of basic robot skills, but it has our custom positive psychology interventions that was implemented, but it was kind of acting as an expert coach. So it'll give explicit instructions to the students, or actually it wasn't just students. It was like to the participants, and then participants would be like kind of given mini homework to work on. On the other hand, the companion-like robot, we thought maybe the robot should act more like a peer or like a friend. So kind of similar to when you have maybe your friend like started like a yoga class, and then they were like, oh, I started yoga. It's been really great. Like, I think you should maybe like, do you want to do it with me? So it's like a more collaborative, I guess interactions where like it uses more gentle and like kind of casual prompt invitations to participate in this helpful interventions. And then in this case, the robot actually participated in the positive psychology interventions. So and then so the robot was actually disclosing about itself. So in this study, we conducted a long-term 8-week-long deployment study. So the robots were shipped to 80 homes across the U.S. So this study was conducted in 2021 during COVID pandemic. So I was a little concerned. I was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. Would the robot really make a difference? But despite that, we shipped the robots out, and then, our fingers crossed. And then in the robot, so the participants were asked to complete 12 positive psychology interventions. There was evidence-based, and which kind of included a variety of topics, including gratitude, meaningful connections, self-compassion, and character strengths. And this is what the interaction kind of looked like.
Every day, I'm going to ask you to lock your room. Can you answer the next 3 questions and pick the pictures that match how you feel right now?
Okay.
The first question is about how energetic or calm you feel. This second one is about how positive or negative you feel. The final question is about how much control you feel like you have now. Today, we're going to do an exercise called 3 Good Things. Research in positive psychology shows that cultivating gratitude can benefit personal well-being. Tell me 3 things that you're grateful for today.
I'm thankful for being able to catch up on work that I was behind on over the past week. I'm thankful that my parents are having their 20th anniversary this weekend. Or, well, they had it. It's today, actually. And I am thankful for the good friends that I have in Purdue.
Before, I was always very harsh on myself, thinking that's the right way to make progress. But now I know it actually helps me to better when I'm warm and compassionate towards myself. It's a complete mind shift. What about you? Did you experience any change you'd like to share?
Okay. It's hard for me to love myself, and this has helped me make it easier. There are a lot of things I would change if I could, but now I'm embracing who I am. So I thank you for that, Jibo.
Wow, thanks for sharing that with me.
All right. So after people engaged in this experiment for 8 weeks, we collected all the data. So for data collections, we measured people's participants' psychological well-being, their mood, and also their motivations for behavior change every week. And also how at the end of the study, we asked people to fill out a working alliance inventory, which refers to how much therapeutic rapport you have with the robot. And what we found was that so the participants who were given the control robot that didn't have the mental health interventions, their well-being didn't change. And I guess in some sense, like that's not surprising. Like it's just a robot, sort of like Alexa-like skills with physical body. Their well-being didn't change. I think a lot of people enjoyed it, but well-being didn't change. But the other 2 conditions, the coach-like conditions and the companion-like conditions, we saw positive increase in their psychological over time. But as you can see in the plot, the companion sort of like a increasing slope for the companion-like robot was higher. And then more interestingly, we also found that people reported a strongest working alliance report with the companion-like robot. And then I guess included in in the slide, but we also showed found like a positive correlations between how much people felt close to the robot and how much they actually improved before and after the study. So, this was like a really exciting study. So I was like really excited. Oh, like, the robot I designed and developed and deployed actually made a positive impact in people's lives. But, that doesn't solve every mental health issues in the world. So like so we're coming back to so what is the, remaining like social or technical gaps. So, after the study, and then the study was conducted before LLM was existed. So there are like, a lot of the interactions and conversations were pretty limited. There were we used a little bit of like a simple NLP, like sentiment analysis, for in the robot. So the robot would ask, "How are you? How's your Tuesday going?" It'll depending on how people responded, maybe it will say, "Oh, I'm so great to hear that," or maybe like, "I'm so sorry," or if it wasn't sure, it would just like, "Thanks for sharing." So very like kind of simple. Responses. And then when I interviewed participants after the study, they were like, I shared all these things, and then the robot just like said thank you and then move on. And also, a lot of the times the speech recognition system we integrated and implemented on the system is sort of like designed or developed for very short utterances, like like usually when you like talk to Siri or Alexa or like at that time it's more very short directives, like what's the weather now. So when in a lot of the interactions we the robot engaged with people, the robot sometimes would make an error, so like make a mistake, or maybe people are started talking and then pausing to think like how to answer. Maybe the robot might like just assume the person was done talking and then moved on. So there are a lot of errors that happened, which in some sense it happens in human conversations too. Like maybe sometimes we like have conversations with one another, and then maybe I'm talking with Petrus and Petrus says something, and then I totally misunderstand, and then I say something very different, and then Petrus might be like making a face, and it's like I might catch that. And it's like, oh, did something go off? And then I might pause and then try to prepare the conversations, right? So which humans are very, very good at. Like we have intuitions for that, but as of right now, the robots or AI systems don't seem to have that. So in order to kind of address these issues, we collected, we worked on like a human-robot social interaction data set and benchmark to see, how can we like, collect these real-world human-robot interactions and annotate, the things, parts of the interactions that went well, parts of the interactions that didn't go well, and then annotate, what went wrong. Like, is it because like the robot didn't understand? So in this case, the agent said like, oh, it's important to realize blah blah blah, and then it asked, the robot asked like, would you like to hear more examples? And then the participant said, no, I don't need the example. But for whatever reason, NLP went wrong, or speech recognition went wrong, and the agent just keeps going like, I'm gonna like tell you the examples. And then people are like, what is going on? Like, why is this robot being silly? So in those cases, we worked on. We collected data sets from interaction data sets from 3 different studies. So 2 of them were my previous work, and then the last one, Empathic Plus Plus, was my colleague's work. We collected, put them all together, and then trained some undergrad students at Purdue. To annotate, based on the definitions we had. So I wouldn't go like too much into it, but like there's basically some of the things we annotated were social errors and the competency, and then if something went wrong, what were the social attributes? Is it the emotions, or is it engagement, or is it like conversational mechanics that went wrong? And then what's the rationale? And then what in ideal situations, what would be the repair strategies? And then we after annotating all these data sets, we conducted experiments to see if existing state-of-the-art foundation model can reason about these social interactions. So this is like a brief sort of, I guess there's a lot of lumber, but the point of it is some of these accuracies are pretty low. So what we found was that despite foundation models and language models are really good at a lot of different things, social reasoning is still something that's not done very well. And then what we've, this is like, sort of another way to kind of represent that. We also found that different kinds of models kind of like had different kinds of we're good at some things, but not others, and then it might not be consistent through, it might be very vary depending on which kind of model it is. So that was kind of interesting. So we wanted to kind of like, put this as a benchmark for, future research. And obviously, our own group will continue working on it to improve the social reasoning capabilities of these AI systems. But, we would like to invite other researchers, in the community to also contribute to that too. And then kind of going back to some of the other things that didn't go so well. So as I mentioned earlier, I think the robot at that time didn't have an LLM, so some people were disclosing a lot of very sensitive stuff, and I was pretty amazed, and I was very touched too. But then they did say I talked about all these things, and then the robot say, thanks for sharing. And then they were kind of let down. So that made me really think about maybe the robot should have a better way to actually, show the empathy and actually, signal that it's, really listening to you. And when we think about human-human conversations, what we do is not not a binary or the kind of discrete kind of actions. Usually when I'm having conversations with my student, my student might say something, and I might nod if they're talking about the interesting things that make sense on my end, and then I might say oh, I see, oh wow, and those are things are called back channel. So those are back channel or feedback given while someone else is talking to show the interest and attention and willingness to keep listening. So these are you're not kind of disrupting the other person's talking, but you're signaling to the other person. And then on the other hand, I think there's an approach called active listening, a communication technique where the listener focuses intently on the speaker, fully engaging with the messages and demonstrating that they are paying attention. This has happened usually after someone completes their responses, and then the other persons might kind of acknowledge what they said instead of just saying, oh, thanks for sharing. It might actually oh, so this is what you meant, or they might have a follow-up questions. And then a lot of them existing, so this is not, our group is not the very first group to think about we need kind of backchanneling and these behavior for the robot, but a lot of the existing backchanneling work in the social robot context has been kind of very focused on neutral backchannel, so a lot of just nodding, a lot of saying which is fine, but based on my experience with prior study, people wanted a little more, a lot of more context sensitive back channels. So when something good happened, they want to see oh wow, or a little more excitement, or maybe oh no, so more contextual based back channel listening behavior. So we, my student Hugh Tran and Goum Cha implemented the sentiment-based backchannel and active listening pipeline. So what happens is when people, a human and a robot, are talking to one another, it goes, the audio signal goes through sort of a two parallel pipelines. So one is extracting audio or prosodic features, so different pitch, or whether they're pause or the energy level of the voice. And then also on the other end is thank you to RCAC Research Computing, we got access to the Azure Whisper API, so it's actually able to recognize what people are saying in real time. And then when that happens, so based on this acoustic features, the system was trying to identify when is it the right time to actually backchannel, because we don't want to do it random times. And then we came up with a sort of rule-based system where it uses different kind of features to decide when to backchannel. And then when we identify, oh, this is the right time to backchannel, we use a sentiment extracted from the what users were saying to decide, is there going to be negative backchannel, or neutral backchannel, or positive backchannel, and then so it will decide maybe it was a negative. People were saying about something negative, so the robot would say, oh no, and then after the person's actually done talking, the robot would actually we use prompt engineering to generate the more empathetic active listening response. So they will be more tailored to what the person actually just talked about. So based on this system, we conducted a human subject studies with 65 participants, mostly recruited from computer science department. Initially, we were, so we started with computer science department, and then my students were we gotta find other people. They're very like particular. So yeah, so we ended up like trying to reach out to other departments too. And then in this experiment, we had 3 different conditions, kind of similar. So control condition where the robot didn't do back channel or active listening. It would just ask questions, respond, and then move on to the next questions, and so on. The second conditions was the robot was only back channeling, so like it would just say and I see, so like nothing else was added. And then the third condition was where the robot was back channel and also provide the active listening behavior. And then so in the interactions, there were sort of preset like nine questions derived from the existing literature that was supposed to, increase the interpersonal relationship and bond. So the robot asked like a series of self-disclosure questions that were increasingly getting more sensitive. So like the very first one was like, what's your, how would you describe your perfect day? So that was the very first question. So pretty like, not that serious. But the very last question was like, which member of your family's death would affect you the most? So a lot of people are like, why are you like not everyone liked that questions, but we wanted to kind of see a variety of different, I guess, the self-disclosure behavior. So this is what the interaction looked like.
The truth about yourself, your life, the future, or anything else. What would you want to know?
At my age, at 84, I know basically what my future is, but I want to enjoy my future. I miss traveling and doing things on my own, but it's getting more difficult. So I would like to know how much longer I can function by myself without assistance, without help. That's basically now just how convenient, how nice my rest of my life will be.
I see.
Not the best timing, but we're working on it.
What was your people managing the challenges?
So that was like a snippet of the interaction. So obviously still not perfect, but we're working on it. But but at the end of the study, we asked participants to fill out a survey to kind of evaluate how engaging, what's the interactions, how interesting was it, or how inquisitive the robot is. And then what we found was that the robot that had the active listening, backchanneling and active listening features were rated much higher on the listening portion. So people rated the active listening robot was better listener than the other 2 conditions, and also it seemed to have better sense, or more smarter-ish. And then in terms of behavior, also in our research, we do a lot of sort of behavioral measurements too. Not just what people reported, but also do we actually see them see their differences in their behaviors? And what we saw was that as the sort of Q1 to Q8 is were for each question, so what we saw, so in the beginning, the number of utterances, the number of words people were, I guess, producing was pretty much the same, but over time, when the robot was backchanneling and active listening, people were actually disclosing more. And then in terms of this, and then I guess the other results that was not included in this paper, we also annotated how the different the depth of the self-disclosures, and then we actually found that people were disclosing more information when they were engaging with the active listening robot. And then the other thing that was actually really surprising for me was so we extracted their participants' facial expressions, so how expressive are they in their when they're talking to the robot, and then when it seems like when between, I guess, the control conditions and the other 2 conditions, there's a significant difference. So I think, so we use a generalized linear regressions. So the sort of, the slope, the trend is when the active listening robot is engaging, they're more expressive. But even with the backchanneling behavior, which is more like a passive behavior, people were engaging, expressing more too. And then this was when we actually analyzed it. This was happening more when they were listening to the robot, not when they're speaking, which was a little surprising. So my students are still like trying to figure out like what is going on, like why does this happen, and how can we leverage that to get to know about the person better. So if they're talking about mental health or like something personal, or like how can we use these sort of expressiveness to better understand this person, to provide more personalized support. So I want to like maybe like pivot the talk a little bit. So so obviously I'm very excited about developing robots, interactive AI systems to benefit people, to engage in a social and emotional way. But is everyone benefiting equally from these new advancements in AI and technologies? And what we really see is obviously we're at Purdue, so we're in a way very privileged. Our students are very privileged. They have access to sort of latest Gen AI Studio and all these things, so they get to experiment and they learn. But there are a lot of there are other parts of the world, even our own Indiana community, there are sort of removed from this access, and they don't know how to leverage them. So there's an increasing digital divide. And then, as a social robotics researchers, one thing I also think about is we are developing these robots, but would people actually want to use them in their homes and very private spaces? And the part that also kind of coming back to the existing identifying the remaining gaps, social and technological gaps. Some of the things that the participants from my study have told me was that you guys had these user informed consent forms, and I actually for each individual participant, I did tell them when exactly the robot was recording, what was not, when it was just processing but not recording, but it was sometimes it will record and it'll be stored, and then you will see a preview box and all that details and stuff. So I thought I did a pretty good job, but a lot of the people still, especially the older adults who are not as tech savvy, they would come back in the post-study interview, that's I had no idea when the robot was recording or not, or what it was recording. So they, when they didn't feel great, they would just put a towel on top of the robot's camera, because they gave us the emotional kind of safety. I was I know for sure the robot's not recording now. And I think we see that a lot in our just sort of state-of-the-art privacy and data collection mechanisms. So a lot of times, example like Venmo, you have to make an account. There's a user agreement with lots of legal jargons and things that I don't really usually read and don't even understand. But it's a binary decision. So you either have to accept it and then just the company's going to take my data. Otherwise, I'm not going to get access to the services. And similar to the way we are doing a lot of the human subjects research, we provide informed consent form, based on what IRB tells us. And then sometimes I do wonder, how much do participants actually understand and they actually remember, especially if it's a very long-term interactions. And then, sometimes in maybe this is more like a text-based ones, but even interactive technologies like Alexa and these things, if you want to change, there are some products that allow you to change settings, but usually they're you have to go through download the app and all that stuff, which is very difficult for people with vulnerable populations who might not have a lot of digital tech literacy. So, so what we find in our studies and other of my colleagues' studies too, and a lot of the older adults, the robots especially, they need to use a lot of social, sort of different sensors to collect personal and environmental data to reason about what to do next, how to interact with people, or navigate around the home and things like that. And then a lot of the times it's unclear what type of data is being collected or processed or stored, and when is it differ? Is it video only or audio only, a combination of both? Is it tracking my face or my identity and things like that? And a lot of the older adults often rely on default settings or kind of avoid just adjusting privacy, or they might not even know there's some options, which in the future, even if the social robots become more available to people, older adults or people, these people might not readily accept the robots. And if they don't want it, that's fine. But I think I also want to make sure when there are potential benefits to the system, and people are just rejecting these technologies for the fear of like, not knowing. I don't think that's really good. So, so in order to kind of address that, we conducted like a co-design study at 2 local assisted living facilities, the one in University Place and the other one Westminster Village, which is like, pretty close by the Purdue campus. And then what we try to really understand, like, what are the things that, that really concerns these older adults, and what are the things that they don't know or do know. And so we had to so we conducted sort of like 2 co-design workshops, so where like, we like recruited participants. We have to like kind of start off with the sort of educating them. What are sensors? How do they kind of map to like how are they analogous to our own bodies, like eyes and ears and things like that, to get started. And then we walk them through different kind of phases of the workshops to kind of like engage them in discussions about like what are the things that you enjoy. You might think you could benefit from the robots, in the future. What are the things that you might have concerns in those scenarios? What are the things? What are the robot, sensors that might be used? What are the data that the robot might need to really like put them in a sort of developer design hat, so they could come up with interesting design insights. What are how would they wanna, if they were to design or develop these robots? How would they want to actually control these privacy and data collections mechanisms? So this is like a quick. Storyboard, and like these are some of the things the older adults came up with, like, we think the robot might be able to help us like as a walking buddy. And then we generated like a privacy scenario based on that to engage in more in-depth discussions. So I'm gonna I guess quickly go over some of the design considerations we found from these workshops and discussions, were that like older adults really wanted to engage in think about the context-aware privacy control. So it's not just one setting that that dictates everything, but maybe I'm in a home where by myself. Maybe I'm home, but like my family members came who are usually not, living with me. Or maybe I'm outside. So in those cases, they thought about different ways. Like maybe if I'm going on a walk, maybe I want the robot to collect the GPS locations just to make sure if I get lost or things like that, and it'll be able to call my loved ones if I fall or things like that. But maybe if I'm home, I don't need that. No, I don't want that. And then a lot of the participants actually talked about we don't trust a lot of big I guess tech companies. So we would prefer, if possible, like on-device data processing and storage. And then really giving them like physical, tangible ways to kind of remove and manipulate storage and like what kind of data is being stored and removed, and so they have like a really good way to control that. And then a lot of the people were also like, there needs to be some kind of hardware-based privacy indicators and the control ways. And so, like the setting on app, like, do I really trust that it's not collecting when it says it's not collecting? So there was a lot of mistrust on these software-based mechanisms. And the one thing that was really interesting is a lot of the participants, because they're not always like tech savvy, they don't want to deal with the phone apps and things like that. They just wanted like more intuitive dialogue-based permission systems. So like, just being able to like, are you collecting video or not? Or like, what are you doing with this? So you can have conversations about it. So some of the, I think the sort of design features we extracted, and hoping, as a part of the next study, next step for our research, we're hoping to like implement some of the insights we generated from the study to like implement like more real-time privacy feedback. So either maybe, I guess a lot of systems already use sort of a light-based indicators, but maybe some screen-based. But maybe, maybe in some cases the robot can physically notify, like, I'm not looking at you, and then like really like, turn around, cover their face. So, to really make it intuitive for people. And another aspect could be, thinking about context-based privacy profiles. So like, the robot actually being able to like proactively like change the setting, or maybe even like negotiate and discuss, do you want want me to like collect these data, or like maybe like I'll turn it off. Is that okay? So there needs to be more I think adaptable, more proactive, time-sensitive, I guess, profiles, privacy settings, and then how, and also thinking about how the data ownership tools, how will we empower these vulnerable population, older adults, to really empower them to like destroy data or like store data or remove it or like store it somewhere else if they want to. And then this is the very last, I guess, project, very ongoing project I also wanted to highlight. So we are, another aspect of, so when we were engaging in this interactions, or I guess research, we also realized it's really important to think about like, how do we educate or like support the older adults who have low literacy, digital literacy, to have access to these, like figure out how to do it. And then this is a collaboration with Northwestern University, a medical school. And then I think the other aspect is like a lot of everything around us is becoming digitized. So even like ordering from McDonald's, like my parents always like complain like, why do I have to like why can't I just, I guess you can go up to the person and order it, but usually people expect like for people to like go onto the what was it called? The kiosks, yeah, thank you. Kiosks, and then like figure out. And then my mom was complaining about it. Oh, like everything I have to do, all the stuff like at airport, they also ask for kiosks, and I don't know how to do that. And then a lot of the times, immigrants who are older adults actually experience double layered of sort of barriers into accessing these healthcare, because on one side they have language barriers, so people who are not fluent in English, they might have issues. But also, if they're older than that, they have low digital literacy. Then also they don't know how to do it. And then unfortunately, I guess fortunately and unfortunately, a lot of our healthcare systems are becoming more digitized. So like, I usually check my kids' doctor's appointment or like test results through MyChart app, which is like a digitized outpatient portal, which is different from emails, and you have to log in different ways. And sometimes it could be very difficult for these vulnerable populations. And unfortunately, existing resources are typically just tutorial videos, mainly in English, or brochures, and they're not equipped to support these populations. And in some cases, there are like community partners. So like one of the collaborators on this project are community partners in Chicago's Chinatown. They have these sort of kind of like large group-based, lecture-based digital literacy lessons, but usually it's like big group. So they have some slides and go over like how to download the MyChart app, how to use Google Map, how to use Google Translate. But unfortunately, a lot of times the knowledge is not retained with those older adults at the end of the day. So we're very excited. So we actually just started data collections in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. So my students, I apologize for no subtitles. I didn't get to do. I don't speak Chinese, unfortunately, and my students didn't get a chance to do that. But we are developing the social robot that can help older adults, immigrant in Chinatown, to learn how to get, like, maybe as a first step, just to get familiar with how what is MyChart app? What can it do for me? Like, so at least maybe we don't expect them to after one session learn everything about MyChart, but at least get an awareness of them. And then if they want to access it, they know who to ask for. So this is like a quick interactions.
管理預約開始之前，你想睇一段簡短嘅教學影片，定係想我一步一步咁帶住你做呢？
我想讓你帶着我做。
喺主頁撳 Visit 掣。
So in the other app, people actually get to test out what they're learning through this main tablet.
好，繼續啦！依家你會去到 Appointments 分頁，呢度會見到兩個部分：過去嘅就診 （Past Visits） 同未來嘅就診 （Future Visits）。我哋先睇一個例子：2020年8月14號嘅一個門診。撳 View After Visit Summary。
All right. So yeah, that was all the projects I had prepared. But just kind of like, I know I went through like 3 or 4 different projects. So just to kind of recap. So hopefully after this talk, you're a little more convinced that physically embodied and present robots have unique opportunities to engage and support people in various contexts, such as in health or education and etc. I'm not saying like robots are like going to solve everything that other technologies could, but there are unique ways it can support that might not be addressed in other technologies. And a lot of the times we can, design, insights can come from a human interface, how we interact with one another to really leverage that and support use that on the robot. But also means that we need to make careful considerations. Like what kind of role, do we want for robots in our lives? Do we want the robots to tell us what to do, or and then really thinking about not replacing existing human support or personnel or human relationships. The very saddest thing that would happen is if my child is like, robots never are mean to me, I just want to be friends with robots all the time, not real humans. That's not what we want. So we want to think about how can these interactive AI agents or robots can actually facilitate human-human relationships too. And then also, lastly, really understanding how do we make sure we're understanding each stakeholder's needs and desires. So we're actually developing things that are helpful for them and they actually want and will integrate, incorporate in their lives. So, this is to say, obviously a lot of my background is in computer science, but this really needs a lot of interdisciplinary endeavors. So I'm very excited to meet all of you here, and then love to hear, your perspective from your different departments and different schools. We need human-centered design and computing, but we also need human psychology and behavior. We also, obviously we need AI and machine learning, and then robotic systems from CS. But we also maybe have to think about ethics in some ways, philosophy too. So I guess my goal to kind of recap is, I really want to see how a lot of the discussion we have around AI and things are how is it going to be used as tools, which is fine. But I think there are other ways, other areas we can also think about. How can we leverage these technologies to be create some helpful companions that help us thrive and have a more flourishing lives. So that's sort of my research agenda, I guess. So yeah, that was sort of end of my talk. Thank you so much. And I'd be happy to, and also this work couldn't have been done without my amazing collaborators from MIT, Boston Children's Hospital, Northeastern University, and Northwestern Medicine, and CBCAC, the community partners, and also our wonderful funders, NIH, E3 from Korea, and then also computer science department through my startup package. But thank you again, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very interesting talk. We have time for some questions, please.
I'm Jay Gaur. I'm from mechanical engineering. And you shared quite a bit of data. Thank you for doing that. And certainly you showed very large scatter in the data, sometimes covering the entire y-axis, and you showed averages and so forth. So my question is, what other statistical methods are you using, and does statistics become really an important discipline for all majors to learn? And so forth in terms of probability distributions and more sort of the frequency-based statistics and so forth, Fourier transforms and so on.
Yeah, so usually in our study, we have it's a hypothesis driven. So usually I would say a lot of my work hasn't required a very complex statistics per se, because we also have limited sample size too. But so usually we would use more parametric statistical testing, or if it's not normally distributed, we would use non-parametric testing too. In some cases we use regressions too, just to see kind of a trend. But we also try to. So I guess the way I'm trying to analyze the data is both sort of quantitative, behavioral data, survey data, and also from the system's log too. But also sort of triangulated with the qualitative data too. So to really understand. In some cases, I had results that were sort of opposite from what I expected, and I was like, what's going on? And then when I interviewed people, there were, so I guess a quick example would be, so in the well-being study I presented, I was hoping, so I did an additional analysis, like trying to see like how does people's personality traits also associate with how much they improved. And then my hypothesis was that people who with neuroticism, they would increase more with the companion-like robot, but they were still not improving as much. I mean, overall they improved more than the coach-like conditions, and I was like, kind of like, man, like that's that's a little bummer. But then when I actually looked into the qualitative data, a lot of the neurotic people, like people participants with high neuroticism, were saying, the robot. So the robot has a very like bubbly and like excited personality. So like right from the box. So from the first day, it kind of acted as if you're like, it's the robot's best friend. And some neurotic people are like, that's too much. Like it's like I just don't feel that comfortable with you. And like the particular one specific quote I remember from one participant who had rated high on the neuroticism, they were like, it just feels like my old friend's kid I've never seen before. So it took them a little while for them to get used to the robot. So that's why like we try to use both like quantitative and qualitative measures, because sometimes if you only have quantitative data, like if you find like you might not understand the context or like rationale, like why that happened. So that actually led us to do more additional like quantitative behavioral analysis, like how many times people are interacting with the robot on a daily basis. And what we saw that what people with high neuroticism overall they were engaging less with the robot, especially in the beginning. So that was really so sometimes I think that the different kinds of like data, quantitative and the word qualitative, like would lead us to different additional analysis, exploratory analyses. I don't know if I like really answered your questions.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Maybe leading off of that last point, a few comments. There's so much fun and interesting things to talk about here. But so much progress has been made here, but I think part of the challenge is how far we may yet have to go on that human side of it, because to the point there, two things. One, the asymmetry between, or even just very subtle differences in the level of positivity or the level of negativity in some of the examples we pick up on so easily. Like the moment we detect an asymmetry between what we think an appropriate, like in terms of sentiment and emotion, right? If like you're just way exaggerating in either direction, suddenly we're suspicious, right? There's kind of this uncanny valley there. There's obviously a visual uncanny valley with robots, like just in their appearance, but also just in the agent's response in terms of like tone and degree of excitement. But also in the timing. I noticed in the video with the old lady saying, about what she hoped for her future was, she had a crystal ball. The video cut out for a second and then jumped forward. If there's this gap, and so I think part of the problem is like some of our models are getting really good, not just from 6 months ago, but just like in the last few months, some of the frontier models are actually very, very impressive in some of the things that you talked about. But the issue is they take 30 seconds to come up with that impressive.
Right, yeah. Like it's so sensitive. Like,
pouring my heart out and then I wait 30 seconds for it to like jump That can be hard. I waited 30 seconds.
Right, yeah. Totally true. Right. Yeah, that's totally true. Like I think like so we like thought about like do we want to use like more deep learning based model for like detections or not, and then it was like it's just gotta be as fast as possible. So that's why we chose with the rule based model, but still there was a little bit of delay, and it's not like obviously it's not perfect, but I think to some extent I wonder if you like kind of like set the tone in the beginning. Like I remember like the study I was running in grad school, I was like talking about like that issues, concerns with my committee members. And then she was like, you know what, maybe the robot could be just very explicit about like, you know what, robot ears are not as good as human ears. And then, so like in some ways, like you put like sort of persona and characters into these robots or agents, so people like kind of have different kinds of expectations. So obviously, the robots are not trying to act exactly like humans. And I think like in some ways, Disney or this like, animations companies do a really good job. Like sometimes we, like in Pixar movie, we see these like lamp like jumping around. Obviously, we know it's not a life an agent with a life, but we like project animacy into that. So maybe some part of it could be designers like the robot can set the tone, and we were actually discussing about something like this with Eli Lilly collaborator too, like in terms of like there's sort of AGV, like a automated forklift. People have different kinds of expectations for these sensors and safety mechanisms and the robots, and then when that doesn't align with the reality, that's when the incidents happen in the factory. So how do these robots, whether it's forklift robot or the social robot, like set the expectations correctly, so like you're like meeting eye to eye. And because in some ways the way you interact with adults, like my colleagues, is very different from how I interact with my friends from high school versus how I'm interacting with my kid or my dog. We just have different, like if my kid makes a silly note, I'm like, whatever. I just laugh it off. So I'm kind of curious. I think I'd love to get some thoughts from everyone too. Some ideas like, how would you but would you still want to incorporate that kind of like not perfect robot? Would that be okay? And in some ways, I'm kind of curious to how the younger generation growing up with these talking devices, AI devices, what would their mental model of these things, right? Do they think it's a perfect, all-knowledgeable AI that's never going to make a mistake, or would they still learn how to use it, like verify some of the information that is disclosing? So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the open and the questions, but I wouldn't. I guess to sort of recap, like obviously I think there are some things we want to leverage for human-human interactions and conversations, but maybe it's okay to deviate from the way humans behave, and by intentional design. So we make it very explicit. It's not a human. It's a robot. It's an AI agent. It has to serve different purposes in our lives.
I think that's where you see some change in the last few years with a lot of these efforts on this front, pivoting towards like the adorable little companion, like a cat, or like those little. I don't remember. My kids have these little robots that they talk to that drive around the house. I don't remember they're very expensive. I don't remember what they're called.
Cosmo or?
Yeah, I think it's Cosmo. But it's very obviously not trying to be a human. And so I think that actually works in its favor.
I see. Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, my name is Hannah. I'm a postdoc in the History and Political Science department. I was curious, now that there's more and more human-AI interaction and companions and so on, and you're sort of pushing for this with your research, if you're at all worried about how that may impact people's social skills and maybe are you thinking about that in your design process? So can we keep that in mind when we're designing these tools, so it doesn't take away from, because they're sycophants and they're pleasing their users, so it's like it's a lot easier to interact with an LLM than maybe to go out and talk to your friends, maybe push back and so on. So I'm curious how you're thinking about that, and maybe if you're taking that into your design choices. How to encourage like real world interaction.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I actually do think about that a lot, and like, cause as I mentioned before, like I don't want robots or AI agents to replace human-human relationship or interactions. But on the other side, in some ways, these AI agents and like robots are like sort of like the way people perceive it. It's like, oh, I don't have to keep my face. I don't like have to worry about it making. Or who knows? Maybe in the future, people might feel like I have to it might judge me, and then I don't want to look silly in front of a robot. But as of right now, people feel like talking about very sensitive stuff or private stuff with these AI agents are still sort of safe because like you might not necessarily experience the negative consequences. In that sense, I think it could be used, if designed properly and integrated properly, it could be used as a stepping stone toward better human-human communications. So one example could be a lot of the people, especially like Asian communities, there's like a lot of social stigma. I mean, not just Asian, but like there's a lot of social stigma against getting mental health support. And some people I grew up in a culture where going to see a therapist, that's just your weakness. You're just being not strong enough. But maybe in those cases, maybe some people can start talking with a robot or AI agents about sort of pseudo-like, obviously not exactly like how you would talk with a therapist in clinic settings, but like almost like a teaser of, what may you talk about? And then, maybe at the end of after a while, the agents or the robot can say, see, like that wasn't too bad, right? Like, talking about your emotions or relationship with other people or, your day, that, don't you feel like a little more relieved, right? Would you consider, seeking out actual human therapists, or would you consider talking, reaching out to your family members or friends? So like it kind of leads that, guides you, nudges you in that direction. So it becomes like maybe that making a big jump to seeking CAPS appointments for students might be difficult, but maybe it could be a stepping stone. Like they try out and then it leads you. So obviously, in order to do that. The agent would have to have a lot of social intelligence to understand when is it the right time, when are they ready, because you don't want to completely ask at the wrong time, and then there's no, I don't want to do that. So I think there's a lot more research that needs to go into it. But I think that's sort of the directions I would love to see happening, these AI interactive technologies really facilitating and nudging them in the right directions. Because I think there are very fundamentally important and good about human are the way we relate to one another. And I think human AI or human robot interactions could be valuable, but maybe in different ways. So it doesn't, it's not the same as replacing human, getting actual clinical therapists.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very exciting talk. Let's keep on going, but get people back to the refreshment and conversation.
Thank you.